The observation chamber was sterile in that particular way that made Dex's skin crawl, not the hygienic sterility of an operating room, but the emotional sterility of beings who had engineered themselves beyond the messiness of feeling. The walls pulsed with a faint aquamarine glow that his captors found soothing. Dex found it about as soothing as a dentist's waiting room. Subject displays irregular micro-expressions again, said Dr. Nira, her voice melodic but utterly flat. She hovered near the transparent barrier separating them, her elongated fingers dancing across her data tablet. Her skin shimmered with the subtle iridescence characteristic of their species, what humans might call mother of pearl, but Dex's skin had long ago lost that quality. Just another way Earth had corrupted him. I have a name, Dex said, leaning back on the too-perfect cushioned bench. And they're called smirks where I come from. Where you were stranded, Nira corrected. Not where you come from. You are Vectalian, not human. Dex stretched, enjoying how the motion made her blink rapidly in discomfort. 2 decades on Earth had given him a taste for causing discomfort in the complacent. 23 years make somewhere home, document Earth soil under my nails long enough that it became part of me. He held up his hands, the nails blunt and slightly dirty despite the scrubbing they'd given him upon rescue. His rescuers had been horrified to discover that the soil particles had actually altered his genetic structure over time, Earth literally becoming part of his biology. Fascinating terminology. Doc is a truncation denoting familiarity, meant to establish artificial rapport. Nira's head tilted precisely 12 degrees, the exact angle of scholarly curiosity in Vectalian body language. Your contamination is more extensive than preliminary scans indicated. Dex couldn't help the laugh that escaped him. It echoed off the chamber walls, causing the 3 research assistants in the background to flinch. Laughter was practically obscene here. Efficient communication had no need for such chaotic sound patterns. Contamination. Right. He stood suddenly, enjoying how everyone but Nira took a synchronized step backward. You know what humans call throwing a ship off course so it crashes on a primitive planet and abandons a child? Child abuse. Or maybe attempted murder. The navigational malfunction that led to your unfortunate extended survey of Sol 3 was thoroughly investigated, Nira said, unmoved. Your parents were compensated per regulation. My parents were told I was dead, Dex said, his voice dropping to a growl that was entirely Earth-learned. They held a dissolution ceremony. I saw the records. And yet here you are. Recovered. Nira's eyes, solid violet with no visible pupils, unlike Dex's now mutated ones with their human-like irises, studied him with dispassionate interest. Though recovery may be an imprecise term given your condition. My condition of being alive? Because that's what Earth taught me. Survival. Adaptation. Dex approached the barrier, placing one hand against it. Something our perfect society forgot about generations ago. The barrier hummed between them. Nira didn't back away like the others would have. Something about this researcher was different, perhaps that's why they'd assigned her to him. She had that rare quality among their kind, curiosity that bordered on the inappropriate. Your neural pathways have been fundamentally altered, she said, bringing up a holographic scan between them. These areas show development patterns consistent with human emotional processing. Particularly these regions associated with what they call humor and sarcasm. Inefficient communication methods. Ever consider that maybe efficiency isn't everything? Dex asked. That maybe there's value in the roundabout path. Value is measurable. The Council has found no measurable benefit to these adaptations. The Council. Just the mention made Dex's stomach tighten, another very human reaction. The Vectalian High Council was the pinnacle of their species' drive toward perfection, 12 beings who had lived for centuries, their bodies and minds enhanced beyond what nature had designed. They feared contamination above all else. And Dex was the definition of contaminated. What does the Council plan to do with me, Nira? Now that I'm recovered? Something flickered across Nira's face, so subtle another Vectalian would miss it, but Dex had learned to read human expressions. It was hesitation. "Your reintegration program is being developed," she said carefully. "Reintegration," Dex repeated. "Sounds surgical. It will be painless." And there it was. Dex felt a cold weight settle in his chest. "You're going to erase Earth from me." "We're going to restore you," Nira corrected. "The human environment has corrupted your natural development. The soil particulates that bonded with your cellular structure accelerated mutation. Your thought patterns are chaotic, emotional, irrational." "Human," Dex said simply. "Yes." Dex turned away, walking to the small viewport that offered his only glimpse outside his prison. The Vectalian medical station orbited their homeworld, Vectal Prime, a planet of breathtaking harmony. Every city planned to perfection, every ecosystem managed with precision, every citizen genetically optimized for their role. He'd dreamed of it during those first terrible years on Earth, a child lost among aliens who looked nothing like him. But now, looking down at that perfect world, he felt only a stranger's appreciation, the way one might admire an artwork without feeling any connection to it. "I survived a crash landing at 7 years old," he said quietly. "Adapted to an atmosphere with different composition. Learned an alien language. Found humans who took in a strange child who looked nothing like them. Grew up. Built a life." He turned back to Nira. "And you think that needs to be fixed? Your emotional attachment to your survival mechanisms is understandable but unnecessary." "My emotional attachments are what saved me." For the first time, Dex raised his voice, another human habit. "The family that took me in didn't do it because it was efficient or logical. They did it because they felt compassion, something you've all engineered out of yourselves." Nira made a note on her tablet. "Aggression response noted. This confirms the Council's concerns." Dex forced himself to breathe slowly, a human meditation technique his adoptive mother had taught him. "When is this reintegration scheduled?" "The procedure requires preparation. Your unique physiology presents challenges." "How long?" 3 standard cycles. What humans would call approximately 72 hours. 3 days. 3 days before they stripped away everything that made him who he was. Before they erased the family who had saved him, the world that had shaped him, the experiences that had forged him. Nira approached the barrier again, studying him with that almost curiosity. "You should rest. Your stress hormones are elevated, another human characteristic that serves no purpose here. On Earth, stress keeps you alive," Dex said. "It tells you when something's wrong. When you need to fight." "There is nothing to fight here," Nira said, but again that flicker crossed her face, doubt, perhaps. "Your Earth survival mechanisms no longer apply." As she turned to leave, Dex called after her, "They called me a monster there too, at first. The humans. Because I looked different. But they got past it, learned to see past appearance to who I really was." He pressed his hand against the barrier once more. "Are you capable of that kind of vision, Nira?" She paused at the door, her back to him. "I see exactly what you are, Dex. That is my function." When the door sealed behind her, Dex was left alone with the humming barrier, the 2 perfect furnishings, and the viewport showing the flawless world that had discarded him once and now wanted to erase what he'd become. They called him a monster because Earth had made him unpredictable. Emotional. Human in all but appearance. He looked down at his hands, the nails that would never again have the perfect translucent quality of his species. Earth was under those nails, in his cells, in his mind. And no matter what they called him, he knew the truth, Earth hadn't made him a monster. It had made him alive. Nira couldn't sleep. This was unusual. Sleep was a biological function for Vectalians, precisely regulated like everything else. 8 hours exactly, brain waves optimized for maximum efficiency. But tonight her thoughts kept circling back to the subject. To Dex. She pulled up his medical scans again, the holographic images floating above her desk. His neural pathways were indeed altered, not degraded as the council had concluded, but reconfigured. New connections formed where none should exist. Evolution accelerated by environmental stress. Computer, access xenobiological archives. Subject, human neurological advantages. Accessing, the system responded. Limited data available. Human neurology is considered inefficient by Vectalian standards. Primary distinguishing characteristic, neuroplasticity under stress conditions. Neuroplasticity. The ability to adapt, to form new connections. To change in response to environment. Something the carefully planned Vectalian genome had deliberately engineered away generations ago. Stability was the goal. Predictability. Control. Neera's private communication panel chimed. The head of the medical station, Dr. Lorix, appeared on screen, his features set in the precise arrangement that denoted urgent information transfer. The council has accelerated the schedule, he said without preamble. The subject's reintegration will commence in 6 hours. Neera blinked twice, the only external sign of her surprise. The procedure protocols have not been finalized. New information has emerged. The council believes the contamination is spreading. Spreading? That's not possible. The subject is in isolation. Lorix's expression didn't change, but his voice lowered slightly. Not the physical contamination. The ideological contamination. Your reports on the subject have been concerning. Your questions about human adaptability. Your extended observation sessions. Ice formed in Neera's stomach, a metaphorical sensation she'd never experienced before meeting Dex. My observations are thorough, as required for proper scientific documentation. The council disagrees. Another researcher will oversee the procedure. You are relieved of this assignment. The connection terminated. Neera sat motionless, processing the implications. The council feared Dex's influence. Not just his altered biology, but his ideas. His questions. The way he made her question. Making a decision that would have been unthinkable just days ago, Neera placed her hand on the security panel and spoke clearly, emergency protocol. Access subject containment chamber. Dex jolted awake at the sound of the barrier powering down. He'd been dreaming of Earth, of the Pacific Ocean, where his adoptive family had taken him camping every summer. In the dream, the water had been the same aquamarine as the walls of his prison. Get up, Neera said, her voice tight in a way he hadn't heard before. Quickly. What's happening? He rose immediately, survival instincts kicking in. The procedure has been moved forward. 6 hours. Dex felt his heart rate spike. Why? Because of me, she said, and for the first time, her melodic voice carried an emotion he recognized, guilt. They believe your perspective is influencing my objectivity. Is it? He couldn't help asking, even as she guided him toward the door. Neera hesitated. I accessed human neurological studies. Their adaptability under stress. Your adaptability, it's not corruption. It's evolution. A slow smile spread across Dex's face. Well, look who's becoming contaminated now. This is not humorous. But her mouth twitched slightly, the barest hint of what might someday become a smile. We must move quickly. Security protocols. The station shuddered violently, throwing them both against the wall. Emergency lights flashed, bathing the corridor in pulses of red. What was that? Dex steadied himself. Neera's eyes widened as she accessed the station's information network through her neural implant. Impossible. We're under attack. Who would attack a medical station? Not who. What? She pulled him down the corridor. Quantum anomaly. Class 3 spatial disruption. Another violent shudder ran through the station. This time, the gravity fluctuated, sending them floating momentarily before slamming back to the floor. In human terms, Dex said, wincing as he picked himself up, what exactly is happening? Reality is, tearing. Near the station. It happens occasionally in this sector, but the station's shields should have. She stopped, looking at a status panel. The shields are failing. They weren't designed for this magnitude. The station's computer voice echoed through the corridors, critical systems failure imminent. All personnel proceed to emergency transporters. They rounded a corner to find chaos, something Dex had never expected to see among Vectalians. Researchers and medical staff moved with uncharacteristic haste, their perfect composure fracturing under actual danger. Dr. Lorix stood at a control panel, his movements precise but ineffective as system after system reported failure. The anomaly is expanding, he announced. Transporter capacity is insufficient for complete evacuation. The Council has implemented survival protocols. Dex recognized the euphemism immediately. You mean you're saving the most valuable people and leaving the rest? Lorix didn't bother denying it. Resources must be allocated efficiently. That's not how we do things on Earth, Dex said, pushing forward. Let me see the systems. Containment breach, Lorix said flatly. Restrain the subject. There's no time, Nira interrupted. The anomaly will reach critical expansion in 17 minutes. The subject has extensive experience with unpredictable environments. Another violent shudder, longer this time. The lights flickered. What exactly is this anomaly? Dex asked, studying the displays. A quantum fracture, Nira explained. Space-time becoming unstable. The station's positioning thrusters can't compensate fast enough to maintain safe distance. Dex looked at the navigational display, then at the power allocation schematics. His mind raced with what he'd learned back on Earth, not just science, but creative problem-solving. The kind of thinking that happened when survival depended on seeing new connections. You're approaching this wrong, he said. You're trying to outrun it or shield against it, thinking in terms of barriers and escape. Those are the only logical responses, Lorix said dismissively. No, they're just the most obvious ones. Dex pointed to the display. The anomaly creates gravitational fluctuations, right? So instead of fighting them, use them. Redirect emergency power to the station's maneuvering thrusters, but instead of moving away, program a controlled spin that synchronizes with the anomaly's pulses. That would tear the station apart, Lorix objected. Not if you time it right. On Earth, we call it surfing, riding the wave instead of running from it. Nira studied the calculations rapidly forming on the screen as Dex input them. It's counterintuitive, but the physics model supports it. It's reckless, Lorix insisted. It's adaptive, Nira countered, already implementing the protocol. And we have 14 minutes until the conventional approach fails completely. As Lorix continued to object, Dex turned to the gathered staff. I need volunteers who can manually adjust the secondary thrusters if the automation fails. There was hesitation, then a young technician stepped forward. I will assist. Then another. Then 3 more. For the next 12 minutes, the station shuddered and groaned as Dex orchestrated what amounted to an orbital dance with disaster, anticipating the anomaly's pulses, riding them, using their energy instead of fighting it. The station's supercomputer, programmed for optimal efficiency but not creative problem-solving, would never have attempted this solution. When the anomaly finally began to dissipate, the station was damaged but intact, its orbit stabilized in a new configuration. No lives lost. In the control room, silence fell as the emergency lights powered down. Dex became aware of every eye on him, violet eyes and iridescent faces, all wearing expressions their society had supposedly evolved beyond: awe, confusion, and reassessment. How did you know that would work? Lorix finally asked, his perfect composure shattered. Dex shrugged, a very human gesture. Earth teaches you to work with chaos, not against it. To improvise. To see patterns where others see only noise. The council will want a complete analysis, Lorik said, but his tone had changed. I imagine they will. Dex turned to Nira. Am I still scheduled for reintegration? Before she could answer, the main communication screen activated. One of the 12 council members appeared, ancient by Vectalian standards, her face a study in engineered perfection. We have monitored the events on the medical station, she said, her voice carrying the weight of centuries. The response to the anomaly was unexpected. Effective, but not according to established protocols. Protocols would have failed, Nira said, with a boldness that surprised everyone, including herself. The Earth-influenced approach succeeded. The council member was silent for a long moment. Perhaps there is something to be learned from this, adaptation. The reintegration procedure will be postponed pending further study. After the communication ended, Dex found himself surrounded by Vectalians looking at him with new eyes. Not as a contaminated thing to be fixed, but as something different. Something that might have value precisely because of its difference. So, he said to Nira. Still think I need to be fixed. I think, she said carefully, that we may need to reconsider what fixed means. Later, standing at the viewport again, Dex looked down at Vectal Prime, still perfect, still alien to him now. Nira joined him, her reflection appearing beside his in the transparent surface. The council has approved a new research initiative, she said. Studying the advantages of Earth-influenced neural adaptation. With me as the lab rat? With you as the expert consultant. Dex laughed, the sound no longer causing those around him to flinch. Earth would call that a promotion. They called you a monster, Nira said, trying out the phrase. Because you were different. They called me a monster, Dex corrected. I said I was just raised on Earth. Turns out that was exactly what was needed today. He placed his hand against the viewport, feeling the subtle vibration of the station, damaged but adapting, just like him. Earth was in his blood now, in his neural pathways, in the way he saw connections others missed. Not a contamination to be purged, but an evolution to be understood. Earth soil under my nails, he murmured. Turns out that's not such a bad thing after all. And somewhere in the observation room behind them, for the first time in the history of their perfect society, a Vectalian smiled, not the precise facial